Blair, what was your first memory of me?
I'm gonna do the same one. June orientation enrollment.
And Blair comes, I don't know, waltzing into this event.
So one day I went waltzing up to her table.
I just assumed he was a big flirt.
Jordan was like this big flirt, and she'd go around and talk to every single person at the orientation enrollment fair. After talking to her for 30 to 45 minutes, I realized that I had abandoned my post and needed to get back to where I was supposed to be working. I said to my buddy Jeremy, I was like, man, that Jordan Priddle, she's the kind of girl I would date. And he turned to me and said, then do it.
He had said, hey, you know, I'm gonna be unemployed. I know it's a really cool quality you're looking for in a guy.
Hey girl, I'm about to be unemployed. Taking care of some little kids next week just for fun. You wanna hang out afterwards or what? At like 11 o'clock that day, I text her to make sure that like we're still on to hang out. And I text her and I was like, hey, gonna get off at 2 p.m. today to come hang out with you. Are we still on? She's like, yeah, I'm just at the pool with my roommates now.
And that afternoon I'd gone to lunch with my roommates and they told me they wanted to go to the pool as well. So I texted him and said, hey, you know, we're at the pool, me and my roommates, because I wanted to be upfront with him so that way there was no surprises.
Then all of her roommates left one by one and I was like, all right, maybe this is a date.
We hung out, we watched the World Cup game, we just sat and talked for hours and hours. We played games, which was great because I'm super competitive and I liked beating him in things.
I felt like I was overstaying my welcome.
I think we've been hanging out for 8 hours now and it's probably time you go home.
So 7 short hours after that, I said, you know, I really need to get going. I've got a dog to take care of. Oh my gosh, I've got a dog to take care of.
So I know that Blair is going to say that I said I love you first. He's wrong. Blair, who said I love you first?
Jordan. So I wrote down all my thoughts. I looked up the origin of the word love. And after I'd written all my thoughts down, I was like, oh, I don't even have to say this to her. I've written it all down. This is clearer than anything I've ever said out loud. I'll just give her this note. Where she was starting her first day of school. Knocked on her apartment door, presented her, and had the intention of presenting her with the coffee, the donut, and the note. After I knocked on the door, all of a sudden I got really scared to tell this girl that I loved her. So rather than being like, hey, make sure you read this note, I dropped it in the donut bag and thought, she'll get it.
Went to school, I had classes, I taught, and my best friend came into town. The next day we're at lunch, and Blair's acting all weird, and he says,
hey, I just feel like I need to explain that note from yesterday since we haven't really talked about that. And she said, what note?
And the only thing that I can think is, he's not gonna wanna date me anymore. I'm such a fatty. I literally took the donut out of the bag, I crumpled the bag, and put it in my side of my car. So yeah, there was a note in the bag.
That makes me feel a little bit better.
So the engagement from my side of the story.
I didn't want her to have any idea this was coming, so I thought I'd plant a little seed.
A few days before we were gonna have our 1 year, he comes to me and says, hey, I don't know if people are hinting at this or what's really going on, but I just want you to know I'm not ready for marriage. I really love you and you know that, but I just started a new job. I'm not quite prepared. Like, I wouldn't be dating you if I didn't want to marry you, but it's just not yet for us.
So 2 days later, the time was right.
So on Wednesday, for our 1 year, he picks me up at the apartment and I've got my little gift and he's got this huge gift bag, which I was like, wow, and a gift. He planned and he got a gift. Okay.
I got the ring about 24 hours before I was going to ask her. It was awesome. It was in this giant box that lit up, which was cool, but you can't fit that in your pocket. So I had to problem solve and go through, okay, well, what do? I got to put it in a giant bag.
And I said, when do you want to do gifts? Just thinking we'd do them at the apartment before we left.
And I said, how about after dinner and before dessert? And she's like, that's fine. And I, looking back, I was like, why would I ever say that?
So he starts driving and he starts turning down all these weird side streets and acting weird.
Halfway there, I realized I'm driving down the street right in front of the marquee where it's going to say, will you marry me? And I was like, well, I can't let her see it in advance. What if she starts getting ideas? So I start pulling back on a back road and I'm like, oh, remember when I used to live over here? And I'm pointing out like attractions like I'm a tour guide at Disney.
So we park and we start walking towards Point.
And I see Autumn, our photographer, and she sees us. And I'm like, okay, it's on.
She comes running up to us when she sees us and says, I've been waiting for a really nice dressed couple all night, and you guys just look so cute. Can I take some pictures of you? In my head, I was like, well, this is kind of weird, but I thought, well, this could either be really random, or maybe Blair hired someone to take photos of us for 1 year. He knows how much I love photos, and I always complain that we don't have enough.
And so we start walking, she's grabbing pictures, people are looking at us through the window in Harry's, and Autumn was like, oh, these pictures are so great. Turns the camera around, and it's my head, Jordan's head, and the Will You Marry Me marquee in the background.
Blair swears that I was like, oh my gosh.
And at that point, Jordan goes, whoa! And I got down on a knee and I said some very heartfelt things that neither one of us can remember because our adrenaline was pumping through our body. And she said yes.
Yeah, and he asked me to marry him. So, lucky girl.
In burning flames of paradise.